Mixed vegetables, great. I'm a vegetarian.
Greetings everyone and welcome to a spooky installment of the Movie Pill. I am, of course, your host, the dreadful Dead-Eye Ducky, and this is the murderous Mr Molotov. How are you doing today, sir?
It's 11:48 in the morning over here, and I'm already dying of cringe. I'm embarrassed to be associated with you.
Today's episode is a very special one because not only is this a Halloween edition, which may or may not actually come out on Halloween, depending on my laziness, but we also have a guest commentator. He's your favourite, he's my favourite, he's the Aberdeen City Women's Bridge Club's favourite. That's right, it is the handsome and sexy Mr. Christopher Baird. How are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, pretty good. What about the cryptological Christopher?
The cryptological...
You got your murderous, Molotov.
The crypto...
Now, Chris, while you're on our show, there's only one thing you need to remember. Sit perfectly still. Only we may dance.
Oh, well, we've got our Simpsons quote in.
Got two Conan O'Briens here, okay.
We have a very special movie today. A movie that I don't really know where to begin with. It is the great Dario Argento's Phenomena.
This had been on my list of movies to watch for quite a long time. I'm a fan of, Italian Giallo films, like Dario Argento films, Lucio Fulci films. Some of those splatter horror movies from the 70s and 80s that they certainly don't make anymore. I'd never seen Phenomena for some reason. And when I found out that Jennifer Connelly was in it, who was one of my favorite contemporary actresses, Labyrinth being one of my favorite films from the 80s period, I figured I had to watch this one. But I'd never really gotten around to it for years, right? Mm-hmm. And then when I figured, hey, let's do a Halloween movie, let's do a horror film, and you really wanted to do Suspiria.
No, yeah. Well, you pointed out that pretty much everyone and their mother has done Suspiria, and if we're gonna get just get a little sort of bit going about Suspiria here, it's a great movie. There's no movie like it. The ability for Italian directors to sort of make violence beautiful is in full display in Suspiria. It's kind of similar to Suspiria, in a lot of ways. It's got that dreamy.
It's got that dreamy.
It's got that dreamy
dream
sort of vibe. It's a fairy tale essentially, much like Suspiria is. The premise is similar. You've got this girl. She goes to this remote school in a different European country. In this case, it's Switzerland. In Suspiria, it was Germany. And she goes to this school, and then various strange things occur, largely revolving around the various deaths, various gruesome deaths that occur. Argento actually considers this movie one of his most important films. He came up with the idea while he was on holiday with his mother when he heard of a murder being solved by the use of insects. The opening of the film has a girl. She misses her bus, and she's in the middle of the Swiss countryside, which is this really just... you can see why Argento chose to film such a fairy tale-like movie in the Swiss countryside, because it's such a fairy
beautiful.
Tale. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's just such a fairy tale-like sort of place. It's the sort of place you'd expect to see an adaptation of Hansel and Gretel or something like that. And the first victim in the film is played by Fiore Argento. It's one of Dario's daughters. And naturally she's killed within the first 5 minutes of the movie, which, to be fair, is what would happen if you just randomly walked into somebody's house. I don't know what it's like in Switzerland, but...
It's a mysterious assailant
kills
her off.
Yeah, and that would be Dario. Dario always does that. So Dario literally kills his daughter in this film. He's just a mad lad that way, isn't he? She gets stabbed, and her head gets blasted back through this sugar glass. It was sugar glass, and it was falling down around her
they're almost deaths like by accident, almost, like the murderer stabs her, but then an accident happens that makes it like 100 times worse. you
Yeah,
know.
and one of the really funny things about this particular death is that they made several fake heads, right? Because she gets her head cut off and it goes flying into the river. And they did this a few times with a few different heads, right? There were like headlines in the local paper of people finding severed heads on the shores of the river. So like the production team had to call up the local police and tell them, look, this is what's happened. That's why there's severed heads showing up in the river. Yeah, we see Donald Pleasance, and he's talking with a couple of detectives. One of the detectives is played by Michele Soavi.
Yeah, of course,
Who
he's always in
who
these.
is he's in a lot of Argento movies, but he's
And Italian movies in general, because
yeah,
we watch a lot.
he's a director in his own right, but many may remember him as the masked man in the movie Demons, the man who's handing out movie tickets on the subway. We see Donald Pleasance playing John McGregor,
The Scottish man.
the Scotsman. He puts
That's
on
gotta be the most Scottish name.
a John McGregor.
In Dario Argento's Rolodex of Scottish names.
Angus McLeish, I like that.
I need the most Scottish name you have. That's too Scottish.
John McGregor is an entomologist, and he is helping the police with these recent murders through the use of insects. There's this really great moment where he uncovers a glass case which has a severed human head which is rotted away and it's covered in maggots. And this movie has a lot of imagery like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of maggots, there's a lot of rotting, there's a lot of gross stuff.
Speaking of gross stuff, there's a chimpanzee. John McGregor
The chimpanzee is by far the best part of the film.
It's the thing you remember.
It is the thing you remember, and of course we'll get to a reason why later.
Yeah, it's definitely the case of Chekhov's chimpanzee or Chekhov's razor blade. I'm not really sure.
There was a couple of funny things about this chimp, right? At one point Jennifer Connelly was really afraid of it because I think when they were going up on the stair lift at one point in the film, the stair lift malfunctioned and it scared the chimp and it bit her on the hand. But the other funny thing about this chimp is that they actually lost it for days. Like they lost this fucking thing for days, and
yeah.
I don't know if you know anything about chimps.
I do.
But chimps.
Thanks to the exposure to Joe Rogan, I know a lot about chimps.
Yeah, I know too much about chimps. I don't want to be anywhere near one.
Yeah.
Chimps, like if they go crazy, then like if a chimp goes full chimp on you,
Yeah.
it ain't good. And so I understand why she was scared. But when they expressed concern for the fact that the chimp was gone, the handler was just like, "I'll get hungry eventually," and eventually it did. It just emerged from the woods one day, and because it was hungry, and they just gave it some food, and that was it. It was back in.
They're just like us. They're just like us.
Yeah, they are. They're just like us. You know, I walk into the woods for days on end, and then I was like, ugh, I could really use a fucking Big Mac, and then I come back. It's the scourge of modern society. You know, it's addictive, really, isn't it? And then we get into our first scene with Jennifer Connelly. Jennifer Connelly, I think, was like 15 when she did this film. She was very.
This
young.
is just before she did Labyrinth.
Yeah, she was actually suggested to Argento by Sergio Leone.
Yeah, because she's in Once Upon a Time.
Yes.
In America.
Which sort of brings me to one of my observations of this movie right off the bat is that it's odd to see an American mainstream star. I mean, Jennifer Connelly would go on to be an A-list actress for decades and many great films, and it's just odd to see her in a movie like this.
Yeah, you can't really think of two.
Like none others come to mind. Even Donald Pleasance, who is a legend of the stage and screen, I wouldn't consider him to be an A-list. I wouldn't consider him to be an A-list actor.
Two Evil Eyes. It was another one with
Harvey Keitel.
Harvey Keitel.
Yes,
yeah.
he was in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can't really think of too many.
There's ones you might see in film. You're like, it's him.
Oh, it's him,
like John
yeah.
Saxon's in a film. With,
Yeah, like John Saxon shows up in
it's stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's nobody huge.
Like nobody really big, like a Jennifer Connelly or.
There'll be
someone
someone who will be missing it.
like that. Oh,
but,
probably. Yeah.
but,
Like, so when you see Jennifer Connelly in here, it almost gives the impression to someone like me, frankly, that this was going to be more of a mainline Dario Argento film. You know, attempting to court, attempting to court more of a normie audience, right?
I don't.
And I think
I think if this is Dario Argento trying to court a normie audience, I'd hate to.
it definitely wasn't. It definitely wasn't. It
Yeah.
definitely wasn't. But anyways, Jennifer Connelly in this movie, she does a great job.
Yeah.
But she's certainly in her early days as an actress. She does a great job working with some rather subpar dialogue. She really loves insects.
Yeah, she really does like insects, and I like this movie. I like this scene because she's the way that they did this scene, right? That they had the bee in the car, and this guy tied a bit of fishing line to a bee, right? And on top of the car, there is a box where the guy would be in the box as the car is moving. And they cut a hole in the top of the car so that he could like sort of basically control this bee with a bit of fishing line. And what's really funny to me is that when you see that close-up shot of Jennifer Connelly with the bee on her hand, and she's like, "Oh, I love bees. I love insects. They love me." And she's stroking the bee. You can see that the bee is desperately trying to sting her, but it can't because they've snipped the bee's stinger off. She has to be commended, along with everyone else in this film, for some of the shit that she went through to do this movie. Like, for example, her eating baby food with a toothbrush.
Yeah.
That was the very first thing that I wrote down on my list of notes. Talk about that she eats the baby food. Who eats baby food like as an adult? Ooh, strained vegetables. Looks delicious at this posh boarding school filled with rich kids.
She offers the headmistress some when she comes in. It's just like, would you like some baby food? I feel like the whole movie, like not only the story itself, but the soundtrack as well. It really gives off King Diamond album vibes, doesn't it? The soundtrack was mostly done by Goblin. There was some other people that contributed as well. Some of the Goblin tracks, the sort of proggy sort of tracks on the soundtrack, honestly sound like they would have been in like wouldn't have been out of place on like Them or The Conspiracy or
like the main theme
especially the main theme. It sounds like fucking Cremation from Conspiracy, you know. And the story itself is honestly something that like I could have imagined King Diamond
you could do that,
writing and singing about.
Jennifer Connelly's bonding with her new roommate. She has all these posters of a guy named Paul Corvino, who is in universe. He's supposed to be a big world famous actor, and Jennifer Connelly is asked by her roommate, "Oh, have you been to bed with him?" First question. After that gets out of the way, it's established that Paul Corvino is Jennifer's father, and so hopefully they haven't been to bed. And apparently, Paul Corvino, this off-screen, never-seen character, who's a big time Hollywood actor, it was supposed to actually be Al Pacino, like the actual Al Pacino. And Jennifer Connelly's character was supposed to be Al Pacino's daughter. So in the original draft of the script, her name was Jennifer Pacino. When Al Pacino found out about this, he did not like it. He did not like the idea that somebody would want to make a movie about a fictional daughter that he didn't have.
For the part of John McGregor, it originally wasn't Donald Pleasance that they were going to get. I think Argento said he originally wanted Peter Ustinov. Peter Ustinov, yeah. Okay. But they also wanted Orson Welles, and according
Jesus, what alternate universe?
And according to the executive producer Angelo Iacono, they actually did get him. They actually got a hold of him, but the one, I think his assistant called up Angelo and was like, we need 3 plane tickets. And Angelo's like, okay, why do you need 3 plane tickets? And it was literally because he was so fat.
Here we go.
He actually couldn't fit in a 1 plane seat. They needed 2 plane seats. Unfortunately, it ended up falling through anyway. So they ended up with Donald Pleasance.
What you call it? It reminds me of Joe Dorowski's Dune. Have you ever heard of the stories behind that? And he was going to play Baron Harkonnen, I think.
Oh my God, Orson Welles is Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah, but that whole thing fell through. So
wow, yeah, of course it did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like he said, like Joe Dorowski decided he'd get him his own chef that would make anything for him. You know, again, it's about the fat.
Just the fat. It all came down to the fat, and well, ultimately his final role was fucking Unicron, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just eats planets.
I was gonna say, Orson Welles' final role was as a giant cyborg robot that eats planets.
A planetoid.
Yeah, he was a planetoid in life, a planetoid in fantasy. You know.
My favorite Orson Welles ones is a commercial he did for like some kind of like interactive like fantasy like sword and sorcery game, right? Like and it's like him like dressed in like a robe and just kind of like talking to the camera. He looks like he's having fun.
I thought you were gonna talk about the wine commercial.
Oh, is that?
Yeah. Ah, the French.
That's just sad. It's just it's funny. It's funny.
It's funny, but it's sad. We establish something about Jennifer Connelly's character. Is that she sleepwalks. She ends up witnessing the murder of another girl in the school, and this is another case where the victim gets stabbed with this weird sort of connective spear thing, and her head just goes straight through a glass window, and of course the girl in question, like according to her, like they basically had someone like pushing her from behind to like, and the first time she did it, it wasn't hard enough, so she couldn't get her face straight through the sugar glass, and she had to do it multiple times. This is the kind of thing that actors had to do back in the day. They had to suffer for their art. They really did.
I believe that the murder weapon you're referring to is a fishing spear.
Oh, is it?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think that's what it would be. Like if you're gonna go spear fishing, I think you use a long, thin spear like that.
Or maybe they could use the fishing spear along with Willem Dafoe's fishing dungarees from Streets of Fire.
Trawler gear.
Yeah, his trawler gear.
You know, so now we've got two students. Although I guess one of them was a tourist. One of them's a tourist, and one of them's a student, being murdered in the vicinity of this boarding school filled with young rich girls. In real life, this place would be on fucking lockdown.
Yeah,
the girls would be private security everywhere if the girls weren't straight up sent home.
In fact, so little of a shit is given about these things that once Jennifer Connelly actually sees this murder occur in front of her, all she does is walk calmly away. I think she ends up on a road, like in a little town somewhere. She gets picked up by a couple of German dudes who proceed to just kind of kidnap her.
But then they bundle her into the car, and they try and restrain her in the vehicle. The one guy tries to restrain her in the vehicle, and it wasn't clear to me whether or not they were kidnapping her for some, sort of very bad purpose.
Well, it's Germans, you don't know.
Or they were trying to just keep her from freaking out in the vehicle and causing some kind of an accident.
So she witnesses a murder. She wanders out into town. She gets kidnapped by 2 German dudes. She jumps out of the vehicle into the woods, and only when she is approached by a friendly chimp in the forest does she calm down and is taken to a weird old man's house out in the middle of nowhere. And of course is John McGregor, Donald Pleasance, who just proceeds to kind of take her in and treat her like this is absolutely normal, like everything that just happened here. And like I say, I mean, this movie is a fairy tale.
Yeah.
This movie, I think this is kind of where Dario Argento flourishes, really, is when he is working within an obviously very fantastical fairy tale like world where nothing is, like, things sort of make sense, like in its own context, but also kind of don't.
Yeah.
You know,
It's filled with dream logic, right?
It's like this Suspiria and Inferno.
yeah, it's been years since I've seen Inferno.
Yeah, it's got cool like alchemic kind of feel to it. That's just the kind of feel I get.
And of
from
course,
it.
a lot of Italian prog rock.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
oh yeah, Emerson, Lake and Palmer did stuff for Info. It's so weird, like some of the big names that pop up in Dario Argento's vicinity.
Yeah.
Like that, really, it's very strange. But this is where we start to get more of a feel for what Jennifer Connelly's power is in this film. What's really funny is that John McGregor points out that, like, actually, like, this bug that she's handling, like, it's basically like aroused by her.
Yeah.
Like it's actually like sexually excited by Jennifer Connelly.
It's a couple years too early to the Jennifer Connelly.
I was gonna say I otherwise I would have said that, like, man, she's so sexy she even arouses bugs, but she is like 15, so we can't really.
I mean,
do that.
look,
She's a pretty young girl.
let's address the elephant in the room here. Jennifer Connelly, when she was an adult, is one of the most beautiful women of the late 20th century
Whenever
film.
you-
She's stunningly gorgeous. She's also a fantastic actress.
Even when she's like, even if we're dealing with her like in her current age.
What's that movie that like everyone uses that as a music?
Career Opportunities.
Yeah.
The John Hughes movie. I never saw it.
No,
I've heard it's kind of shit, but but everyone just uses that scene. It's like her on the sort of coin operated Bronco thing, which is riding on the thing. Like, people use that all the time, like those scenes for like synthwave music videos and shit. Yeah.
However, in this film, she's 15 years old. Everybody.
Absolutely.
So that Bumblebee is definitely going a bit too far. It's the Harvey Weinstein of.
I'm just saying we should ostracize that bee from our society.
Hashtag B2.
At this point, we're seeing a lot of the sort of ostracism that Jennifer Connelly's character is facing because she's, I don't know, a weirdo, I guess. Dario has gone on record saying that this movie is set in a time period, an alternate timeline, where Nazi Germany won the Second World War.
Yeah, I know I was going to be on to bring up, but yeah, that's.
I have tried to find the source for this, and both the Wikipedia article and another article that I read somewhere. I think it might have been a Reddit post actually. Both used the same source, which is something I can't get hold of. So apparently he said this, but yeah.
It's an interesting bit of, I guess it's the director's headcanon about the world that they've created, because nothing in this movie actually touches on any sort of alternate history theme, any sort of political messaging, nothing to do with World War II, nothing to do with Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
Or the crimes of the Nazi regime. But when I was watching this movie for the first time, I tried to watch it from that perspective that the director had ebbed out, and I did sort of notice a couple of thematic or even plot points that you could extrapolate into being set in that world. And one of the headcanon theories that I developed when I was watching it is that the reason that the other girls at this school in Switzerland are so obnoxiously and over-the-top mean to Jennifer Connelly's character, the only American in the story, is because they are the children of high-ranking Nazi officials in 1980s Nazi Germany who have been sent to a this all-girls Swiss boarding school for their education, and as a result, they're incredibly prejudiced against Americans. That was the only way that I could justify in my brain how these girls were treating Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, because
that their parents were Nazis, that they hated Americans as a result.
Yeah, because realistically, if we're gonna, putting all that stuff aside, they are high school girls. Their ostracism of girls, other girls that they think are weird, is kind of in their nature. There are two things that I can see that might relate back to this being set in a world where the Nazis won. One of which can be easily explained. The other, again, I think could probably be easily explained, but I think is a little more interesting, which we'll get to later in the story. But in this case, you have Jennifer Connelly's roommate, Sophie. She goes out to meet up with this young lad of her age, or about her age, for a bit of fun times out in the bushes, you know. And he talks about having to go back to join his regiment. Now that could be an indication of, you know, the more, you know, the society being more militaristically inclined in some way that you might see in a National Socialist or fascist state. But at the same time, Switzerland has mandatory national service. So I'm not sure I can even justify that.
I didn't read into it that way personally. I mean, Switzerland was a neutral country in World War II, and
yeah,
I don't believe that the Germans had any real serious intentions of annexing it.
yeah.
I believe.
Here's the thing, though. You know, this is Dario Argento we're talking about. We're not going to assume he's any kind of buff on geopolitics or anything like that. Going back to the ostracism that she faces from the girls in the school, it's actually so bad that not only are the girls getting in on it, the fucking headmistress gets in on it. In fact, they're standing in her room with the headmistress, and they're like taking like bits of her diary and reading them out loud to the headmistress. And the headmistress is flat out directing them to spy on her. Yes, essentially, she's encouraging it, and this actually, this ends up actually leading to one of the set piece moments in this film. She gets chased into the main hallway of the school by a bunch of these girls. One of them fucking sprays her with a fire extinguisher. Fucking bitches be cray. Jennifer seems to have this kind of moment of serenity where she just starts going, "I love you all," and everything, and it's kind of got a vibe of Carrie, except in Carrie she's genuinely like she's mad and angry, but here she's just serene. And then I almost got a like a Jesus moment, like it's like a Jesus vibe about it. And there are forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And she summons, a girl's worst nightmare, harmless bugs. Except it's a fucking swarm of harmless bugs battering against the windows. They essentially bred flies for this movie. Like at the studio, like they had this special area set aside where they bred flies, and it took a while for it to happen, but they ended up with like millions of flies. The moment where you see the bugs crawling up against the window, looking like they're trying to bust their way in, it's like a double glazing. And they've just fed bugs, like flies, down between the two slats of glass. So they're trapped there, and it looks like they're trying to get into the school. The other thing is, you see this shot, and some of the special effects were done by Luigi Cozzi, who is very well known for having done movies like Star Crash, and Hercules.
These silly films.
Yeah, these like silly special effects laden movies. I like those movies, he did the special effects, and what he did was he got a shot of the school from the outside, a still shot, and he when you see what appears to be the flies swarming around the school, that's actually coffee granules in water that he superimposed over the top of that film, and it's perfect. Like the way that it moves and everything around the building, it almost looks perfect. You wouldn't know, and I didn't know until I heard him talk about it. So the teacher's first reaction when this happens is to straight up call a mental hospital to come get her, to put her in a mental hospital. Well, not to call her family, not to call her guardian or whoever her parental decision maker is back home,
but to call a mental hospital to get her away from the school. And then the teacher calls her diabolical and relates some sort of a biblical, demonic aspersion upon her. Who runs this place? Like, it's like this school wants to get sued. It's not
Exactly.
like it's not like this is like some nobody's daughter who's going to your school. This is the daughter of a multi-millionaire famous actor who could probably buy and sell your school after he sued you.
Again, the plot is so weird because it almost feels like at times that the plot regarding the murders is almost separate from other parts of the movie. Like, for example, where Jennifer...
I know exactly what you mean.
It's so dreamlike. It's so fantastical in that way. I was actually wondering how we were going to get through the plot of this movie in any kind of detail, because it's so dreamlike and so fluid.
It feels almost like Argento had 2 or 3 different ideas for movies that he wanted to make, but he couldn't make all of them. So he smashed them together around this plot device of Jennifer Connelly going to the Swiss boarding school. So she does exactly what I would do in her situation. She calls her dad's lawyer.
Yeah, she calls her dad's lawyer. She's really wanting to go back to LA, and find that things are bad if you're more afraid of being murdered in Switzerland than you are in LA. So,
I believe it was actually New York, which in the 80s is a very, very bad place to be.
Donald Pleasance's character ends up being killed by someone in a dark trench coat and a hat, which is again quite typical of Argento's movies. Probably even him doing it. The chimpanzee is unable to help Donald Pleasance.
It's like ripping the door.
It's ripping the door down. Screaming. It's like screaming. It's trying to get there. We should talk about the placement of the soundtrack in this movie to some extent.
Yes,
because like.
Oh yeah. I have some thoughts on this.
There's 2 songs, but one in particular that we talk about.
Yeah.
Well, the one that comes to mind when it comes to this scene is when Jennifer Connelly goes to John McGregor's house. Mm-hmm. And she sees John McGregor's body being carried out on a stretcher, and for some reason fucking Motorhead is playing while the corpse of this elderly man is being...
It's Locomotive, is it?
It's just... It's just not a song that you would expect to be used. It doesn't really work. It's almost like some producer came to Dario Argento and was like, all right, Dario, you got to use these songs in your movie. And he's like, what am I supposed to do with these? And he throws them in,
actually,
inopportune times.
Actually, I guarantee you it was Dario, because Dario is on record as being a big heavy metal fan. He is, actually.
The problem is, though, is like Motorhead's badass.
That's the trouble, yeah. Like, Motorhead's badass, and it doesn't really
proper,
work.
like, grind, I'll fucking get you. But
yeah, meanwhile, it's just this elderly man being taken out on a stretcher. And, of course, the other oddly placed track, which is used twice in the film, is Flash of the Blade by Iron Maiden.
The Flash of the Blade is a very obscure Iron Maiden song. It's from their 1984 album Power Slave, which has some of their most famous tracks on it, like Aces High and 2 Minutes to Midnight and Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Mm-hmm. And it's not a song that people commonly talk about, even in the Iron Maiden fandom. But the 2 scenes that it's used in this film, one of them is just a young girl, soon to be murder victim, walking around an empty house, and the other one is Jennifer Connelly's character attempting to get a phone from inside to reach a phone from inside a locked room. Neither of which call for an up-tempo song such as this to be used. Strange. I guess Dario Argento just saw the title "Flash of the Blade." Like, oh, I want to use that in my movie about a guy who.
It's about fencing.
Stabbing people.
It's about fencing.
It doesn't work the way that it's used in the film.
It stands out to me as kind of hilarious, and that's one of the reasons I love
it stands out. Yeah.
John McGregor's been murdered fucking the chimp tries to get revenge initially by jumping on the killer's car and trying to smash through the windscreen. Ends up getting thrown onto the road. Later on, we see the chimp searching, like just randomly searching through a bin and fucking finding a razor blade.
This monkey has weapons stashed all over the place, man. He's ready for any conceivable
scalpel.
situation.
He has a fucking razor blade in a bin. We don't know what this monkey's up to.
This monkey doesn't miss a beat. He's breaking down doors to rescue his owner. He's jumping on the rooftop of a car of the person who murdered his owner. He's got weapons stashed in trash cans all around the property. This monkey is better than most private security contractors.
So now that John McGregor's dead, you've got serial killers running around. You've got chimps with razor blades. Fucking Jennifer Connelly is like, fuck this. I'm getting out of here. So she ends up.
I'm going back to pre-Giuliani, New York City. It's safer.
Yeah, pre-Giuliani, New York City. This is too fucked up. I'm going back. So, but she ends up back in the custody of the character of Frau Bruckner, who is played by certified mad bitch Daria Nicolodi, who, as I said earlier, was Dario Argento's wife at the time.
I'm sure they got along, right?
I think they got divorced just after this.
They got divorced. Their marriage was falling apart around the point
I don't
of
know if it
this
was
film.
this one where like they were just fighting all the time on the set.
I believe that she denounced this film as being quote unquote reactionary, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean.
It means as much as Dario Argento calling this film about Nazis then.
It sounds to me like she's a real card-carrying Marxist that she's throwing around slurs like that on a Giallo film that her husband made. You know, she must really be digging deep into that Marxist catalog of insults for something to throw at him.
This is my favorite right-wing movie, by the way. It's just
Yeah.
She ends up going to Frau Bruckner's house. Frau Bruckner just suddenly starts to act very erratic. Jennifer discovers that she has a son who you haven't seen in the film so far, but she also has a room where there's a life-sized doll of a child just sitting there, which again would be sending up red flags for me, but apparently not Jennifer Connelly. Frau Bruckner then proceeds to offer her a pill, which Jennifer then takes for some reason. Again, there's that dream logic or retard logic.
She's very insistent upon her taking it, like very insistent.
Yeah. She takes the pill. She immediately throws the thing back up because she's just like, oh my god, it's poison. Which I guess you can just get from a pharmacy here because it's like it's actually got little blister packets and whatnot.
Something happened to me when I was watching this scene of the film that I wanted to run it by you guys. When they're fighting over Jennifer Connelly taking the pill, did your dialogue switch to like Italian dialogue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Apparently there are parts of the film that aren't that don't have the dubbing. And apparently Jennifer Connelly knows several languages. I think she was actually speaking Italian there, but I'm not sure. You'd have to.
Is there anything she can't do?
Exactly.
Oh,
She's
Jennifer.
just. Oh god, she's just perfect, isn't she?
Jennifer.
But
we're just gonna spend the next 45 minutes simping for Jennifer Connelly. So if you want to grab a drink and come back,
at this point, it's pretty clear Frau Bruckner is the murderer. It's quite clear, and the reason that she's the murderer is another thing that I wanted to bring up in regards to the whole this is set in Nazi Switzerland thing, is that her son is actually a deformed rape baby from when she used to work in a mental asylum, and she got SA'd by a crazy person there. It's pretty much Freddy Krueger's backstory. Again, ended up having this deformed rape baby, and which she keeps in her house, and I've seen the theory that the reason that she keeps the deformed rape baby in hidden away from the world is because of the Nazis' eugenics programs. Now, I don't know what you guys will think about that, but
She is assaulted. This character is assaulted in her backstory, and one of my favorite lines of dialogue from this whole movie is when this plot point is revealed. It's during conversation with one of the detective characters, and he's like, "You were assaulted, 13 or 10 years ago. Surely you haven't forgotten the incident." Surely you
totally
haven't
forgot
forgotten
about it. Yeah, when you get raped by a mental patient, you tend to remember it. I don't know.
I was like, yeah, I'm not normally one for trigger warnings or taking other people's sensitivity into consideration when it comes to, talking about the facts, yeah, or talking about the facts of life or things that have actually happened. But man, this cop really just steps on a landmine there with his bedside manner, for lack of a better term.
He probably should have taken her sensitivities into account, because he ends up chained up in a basement next to a pool of like putrefied corpses. And this is one of the most foul things in this movie, is when Jennifer Connelly ends up in this pool of putrefied flesh with rotting flesh like coming off of bones. And I mean, obviously that's not what it is, like they mixed in a bunch of stuff and whatnot, but honestly that's what it looks like. And
you buy into it because you're watching a movie.
Yeah, and that's what that was the part that got me.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen some pretty awful things in movies, and I haven't turned away. I'd be sitting eating and whatnot, but that I was like, oh no, I was retching at that.
Yeah, no.
It looked so awful. And Jennifer Connelly was like, I'm not getting in that, and I do not blame her at all. But Dario managed to persuade her. She manages to get away. She meets a small boy in a room somewhere. It looks like some kind of weird cell. I don't know where this is. It's like underneath the house or something. It's so strange. Like this whole movie is weird. But she meets the boy, and of course we see that the boy is extremely deformed. Fucking Jennifer Connelly ends up getting chased out to a small pier where there's a boat by this deformed child. They jump into the boat with her. And this is why you need to watch this film, ladies and gentlemen, alright? So she summons a swarm of flies to attack a spear-wielding monster baby on a rowboat. I'm just saying, this is what cinema should be.
The final boss of this film is a deformed 10-year-old child.
Yes, exactly. And so it ends up getting like swarmed by these flies, which sort of, I guess, start to like eat away at his flesh.
Yeah, he rips away.
And they did this, like they had like he was covered in like sweet stuff like syrup and like other sugary stuff to get the flies to come and sort of swarm all over him. So he was actually covered in fucking flies, this guy. And so eventually the deformed monster rape baby gets knocked into the water, ends up dying. Jennifer Connelly tries to start up a boat motor, automatically almost sets herself on fire. The water gets set on fire. It's beautiful. It's such a cool looking scene.
It's a lot of fire from that amount of gasoline. I gotta say, the whole lake goes up.
Again, fairy tale logic. She ends up getting onto shore, and this is when Frau Bruckner returns, and this is when we get the crowning achievement of this film.
Yes.
The absolute monster moment of this movie.
I mean, she's like cackling away.
She's wielding like a sharp piece of sheet metal, which she uses to kill. I think she uses to kill like Jennifer Connelly's dad's assistant who shows up. And
it's not his assistant, thank you very much. It's his lawyer, and that lawyer traveled across the Atlantic Ocean to rescue his client's daughter.
That's a
that is a good lawyer right there.
Yeah, so it's too bad. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disparage or downplay your profession's achievements or anything like that, Colin. I'm sorry. After she attacks the guy with the piece of sheet metal, she's about to do the same to Jennifer Connelly, and then suddenly, out of the blue, Super Chimp fucking shows up and starts slashing Dario Nicolodi to death with a razor blade, and you can tell that this is when their relationship was breaking down, because Dario literally had his wife fight that chimp. She was wrestling with that chimp on set, and again, that like you just don't get actors that really suffer for their art like this anymore.
You really see the whole final scene as a metaphor for their divorce, because Dario Argento's wife just murders a lawyer in cold blood, and then gets slashed by a razor blade wielding chimpanzee. It's there's a lot of levels.
The chimp's Dario, right? Or is it?
I don't know. It's up to interpretation, much like the stuff about Nazis, I guess. We get a final shot with Jennifer Connelly hugging the chimp, and apparently, like they did actually make up after Jennifer Connelly got bitten on the hand by the chimp. They did make up, and
Jennifer Connelly and the chimp made up, or Dario Argento and his wife made up?
Well, obviously the latter isn't true because, well, they split up, but. At any rate, Jennifer made up with the chimp, and we get this nice little moment where she hugs the chimp, and that's the end of the film. But that's not the end of the issues for the production team, because at the end of this, what they had was millions of flies, right? And so. They have millions of these flies at the studio, and they're just sitting there like, well, what the hell do we do with all these flies? And I think the producer said, like, well, just let them loose. So that's what they did. They let the flies loose at the studio, right? But the problem was that at the time of year that they did this, it was really cold. So when they let the flies out the window, the flies just came back and started swarming around the side of the building. And you ended up with these, like, just these Italian people, like, just normal people walking by, looking up like, the fuck is that? Seeing this massive black mound on the side of the studio building, and it was just flies. Like, millions of flies crawling everywhere.
When art becomes life. This is literally a scene that happens in the film.
It is, yeah, and it happened in real life. I agree with Argento. It's one of his standout movies, in my opinion. It's not as good as Suspiria, but then what is? You know, like even in terms of his filmography, like Suspiria is king, but this one is like it's close to it, in my opinion. I think it's one of his best. You know who agrees with me on that? Very much the same as in Streets of Fire's case, the Japanese. They agreed with me because the Japanese love this movie, and you can tell they love this movie because all you have to do is look at the survival horror classic Clock Tower.
Oh yes,
the original Clock Tower.
Little guy.
If you look at the aesthetic of that game, it's phenomena. The design of the main character is Jennifer Connelly. I believe her name is Jennifer in the game as well. And the villain of the tale is a woman with a deformed baby, a deformed child.
I didn't know there was a woman with it. I just thought it was the little guy.
Yeah, I've seen like let's plays of the game, and it's
named Scissor Man.
Yeah, Scissor Man. At one point, actually, someone does get attacked with scissors in the movie. It's the start. Fiore Argento gets scissors through her hand at the start of the film. But yeah, and of course, it's also set in I believe it's in I think it's like a foster home. It's like an orphanage for girls.
Right.
In Clock Tower, and yeah, so this movie had some influence.
There's nothing great.
there.
There's nothing greater than things influeing things in Japan, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
it's
some
usually
of the best. Some of the best media.
yeah,
Some of the best media, then making the best media over there.
They have their own culture, which is very strong and very, vibrant. But then they also take the best bits of culture from other
Yeah.
places, Germany, Italy, the United States,
hmm
and they incorporate it into their own cultures, and then they tell it with their own Japanese sensibilities. And I think it's just wonderful how they do
Yeah,
that.
it's the most simple things like Mario and Zelda are two of the most well-known ones actually. But
yeah, and when it comes to Clock Tower, that was a spearhead for the survival horror genre.
yeah,
So like no like games like Clock Tower or Sweet Home, and no Resident Evil, no Silent Hill. So like yeah, see this movie had some influence, right there. So there's something to be said for it with its flawed placement of soundtrack and everything. Like I think this is one of his most interesting movies. Visually, in terms of its making of, because I mean, just like I say, some of the stuff that the special effects guys, the actors, the stuff that they had to go through. It's a testament to the talent and determination of Jennifer Connelly, apart from anything else, that she was willing to go wading around in that fucking pool of,
at her age.
At her age as well. Like, I mean, she had to be persuaded, but she did it. I don't know if I would have done that.
And the soundtrack slaps. I'm not sure why Dario Argento chose to incorporate these contemporary, heavy metal songs when he had a really well put together soundtrack
Yeah, it's just a metalhead.
soundtrack by Goblin. I mean, Goblin made a great soundtrack for Dawn of the Dead, which is iconic.
Yeah.
He made a great soundtrack for Suspiria, and then they did it again for Phenomena. And he really only uses it over in one scene and over the closing credits.
Dario's a weird guy. We'll probably never fully understand what he's doing, but then that's what some of the best filmmakers are like.
Yeah.
Really.
Check out that soundtrack on Spotify, though, especially the main theme, Phenomena.
If King Diamond did an album based on the story of this movie, I'd be there.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be amazing. But anyways,
him writing a part about like the chimpanzee.
yeah, and she got killed by a chimpanzee.
And he like screams like a chimpanzee.
That would be, oh god, I'd be so there. It'd be amazing. So, what are your thoughts on this film, Mr. Christopher Baird? What is your takeaway from this?
No, I've always liked it. I remember getting shown it ages ago because I've pretty much seen the majority of like Dario Argento's movies, like the ones that have been translated at least.
Yeah.
Because I know he's got a bunch of comedy films and whatever.
I haven't seen any of those. No.
No. But yeah, I always liked this one. I always liked Suspiria, obviously. But yeah, I like his more like dreamy movies.
Mm-hmm. One of the ones I severely dislike is Trauma. That was I think that was his first American one, and that oh
yeah,
god,
that's a thing.
If you want like a proper bad movie from an auteur director, Trauma, go for that.
This is where he is going for like is going into the 90s. That's when he's kind of going down.
I'm not even gonna get into Trauma because we'll be here all night.
It's the spiritual sequel to Suspiria.
Yeah.
It feels like a bad nightmare that you're in, where the truth about what's happening is just around the corner, and you can never quite see it clearly, and you can never quite grasp it. And that sort of drives home the atmosphere of the film. There's a sense of dread everywhere around it. Like the daytime scenes are overcast. There's no sunshine in this movie. The nighttime scenes are moonless, and there's always a strong wind blowing. Like there's a feeling of dread that he really works into the film just with like the weather that he chooses to shoot it.
Exactly.
And in that respect, I think that this movie is it's emblematic of Dario Argento's styles,
Mhm.
of his style. If you want a really good like supernatural thriller with an eerie dream nightmare vibe to it, and an excellent soundtrack, this is worth watching. This is definitely it's almost a time capsule in a
Mhm.
way, because you have a big name, you have a young actress who would go on to be a big name in Hollywood for decades, and she's in this low budget, uh, obscure, weird ass horror movie from Europe.
It's one of his best movies. It's one of his most unique films. It's a unique film in its own right, and I would highly recommend it for this Halloween, and for any Halloween, quite frankly. So, well, there we go. I think we've summed that up pretty well. We went on for quite a while on that one, actually. So, yeah, I have been your host, Deadeye Ducky. This has been the wonderful and sexy Mr. Christopher Baird in his inaugural outing in the Movie Pill. This has been a Clowntown crossover with Movie Pill.
Yeah, that's my thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like,
and yours.
yeah, you walked in and the studio audience clapped and cheered because they recognise you from Clowntown.
Such an internet favorite.
Oh, exactly, yeah. And of course, this has been the murderous Mr. Molotov. Say bye to the people.
Stay based, stay movie pilled. Keep that lawyer on retainer. You'll never know when you need him to fly across the world and rescue your daughter.
May you ride the night to the morning sun. Ooh.
Too spooky for me, bro.
Dario Argento actually had a massive falling out with the original interior set designer of this movie, right? For various reasons, and according to again Angelo Iacono, the executive producer, they actually had an argument in Argento's office, and the set designer, whose name I cannot remember, said something like, "I am the only set designer with balls here," and he literally pulled down his trousers and slapped his balls down on Dario's desk.
Literally!
Literally, look at my balls!
Unless you show them right now, there's no proof that you have balls. Fuck you.
This is Italy, apparently. That's all I can really say about that.